I want to work on this new battlefield. How do I announce myself?
Some of the best answers people give in interviews is, I don't know.
What kind of models do you appreciate the most?
Burn the calories and show you're working. Put in your geometry breakdowns, put in your texture breakdowns.
We have 5 pieces. Which one is AI?
Literally every person watching this is screaming at the very obvious.
If there's anyone who's listening who has those skills, write to our careers page.
I highly recommend you reach out to any of our recruiters.
Get hired.
Hi everyone, my name is Ninel Anderson. I'm CEO of Devoted Studios and I'm your host at Devoted Speakeasy. As you guys know, we started a new podcast subtype. I don't even know how to properly call that, but it's How to Get Hired. 2023 have been one of the craziest years we have dealt with in the last few years in the gaming industry. So all we need is hope and inspiration of how to get hired onto our favorite franchises. And who is not the best person to talk to as one of the most renowned art directors and our guest today, Chris Matthews. Chris, hi.
Hi Ninel, thanks for having me.
Chris is currently a studio art director and co-founder at Ridgeline Games, a first-party EA studio working on the narrative version of Battlefield and a new addition to Battlefield franchise. Chris was also an art director for Coalition, working on Gears Wars, was also an art director for Forza Motorsport, and art director and co-founder for the Motive Studio, also one of the EA studios working on Star Wars Battlefront 2.
I'm impressed. I'm really impressed.
Being such a renowned art director, I can't wait to hear how did your journey start and how did your first interview in a video game industry go, or how did you get your first job specifically?
So I actually went to university to do design because I was an artist all the way through school. I'm sure my old school friends will remember me sitting in the corridors painting when I should have been in various different classes. And when it came time to leave school, I didn't really know what to do. I didn't really feel like I was the strongest fine artist out there. And so I just looked around for courses that kind of leveraged strengths, things I enjoyed doing. Back in the sort of, mid 90s, when I was making those decisions, that there were really no video games courses at all. There was no computers, in fact, actually, when I first got to university to my design course. Luckily, a couple of friends of mine had found their way from similar courses at university into the gaming industry. And I just asked lots of questions and tried to look for something unique that would make me stand out when I went for that very first interview. It was it sounds so weird today, but yeah, I just created a whole set of little animations and renders, and I rendered them all down and actually put them on a Sony PSP because I didn't have a laptop in those days to take to interviews with me.
Are you serious?
I mean, it was really still the days where people carried paper portfolios and showed renders at interviews, printed out on paper. Yeah, I showed up and slid my PSP across the table and played what I would call a showreel now. That seems crazy, but it got me my first gig. I got into the games industry.
If I'm an artist and I want to work on this new Battlefield narrative franchise, how do I announce myself to you or to the studio? Is it the careers page? Can I write to you directly on LinkedIn? Can I stalk you on ArtStation? Or I know you have a beautiful portfolio in Behance.
I try and respond to anybody that does reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm super busy most of the time, and that's not the first place I go to get my communications. Yeah, people connect with me on ArtStation and Behance all the time and send me messages. And then, yeah, of course, so Ridgeline Games is super new. We've sort of been around now for about 18 months, and we have a website and a careers page on the EA careers site, and we're constantly posting new roles there.
You're hiring more generalists or more specialists was where you're at right now. And would that change next year?
I look for people who have disciplines that they really care about, but the people that I think make it into our studio are those that are also really interested in the whole zeitgeist of making video games.
Are there any roles that are particularly hard for you to find folks? And if there's anyone who's listening who has those skills, you would be like, please write to our careers page.
Answer me, you understand?
Right now, we have several roles open. We're filling out our VFX leadership right now. If you're good at what you do and you are passionate about Battlefield, I highly recommend you reach out to any of our recruiters on LinkedIn and just get your information to them.
Now, I'm very curious with regards to your process, but we have a bunch of the artists that in our Discord channel that actually prep the questions before us going into this shoot. So I want to give an opportunity and announce some of the questions that they have. And so one of the questions Ryan has asked is, what makes an applicant stand out in the interview process?
As I obviously interview a lot of people, I actually think some of the best answers people give in interviews is, I don't know. And quite often in an interview, I'll ask people questions and it tells you straight away about the caliber of the person you're talking to. If they can just be really honest and be like, yeah, I don't know that. I haven't learned it yet, but I'm going to learn it. Or here's an example of how I'm trying to learn that thing, versus, talking outside their field or somewhere where they're not a subject matter expert.
I don't know how to work that fucking thing.
Personally, I always prefer and really enjoy when you're going through tens, if not hundreds of resumes, like where people have written a paragraph about what they do in their life. It really helps you understand the type of person that you might be speaking to up front. With portfolios, clarity of purpose is beyond any other thing in the portfolio. Look at your portfolio and pick the 5 or 10 really best case examples of what it is you want to be, what really represents you well as a person. Burn the calories and put in your, show you're working, right? Like put in your geometry breakdowns, put in your texture breakdowns, put in your process. Because the first question, if there's an image that's good enough to sort of pull me in and let me go into that section of your art station and look at something, the first thing that I look for, right beyond, hey, that's a really cool image, is like, how did this person get there? I've seen great images that have taken people 6 months to do, and I've seen great images that people have done in a couple of evenings, right? And that all very much weighs into who they might be when you bring them into a studio.
Blue is asking, how do you guys treat your employees and what is the work ethic, which I would assume is more around the work culture that you have in your team?
We're a very open, empathetic group of people, for sure. We've set the studio up in a way which I think we've had to, beginning remotely, where we listen to everyone. I mean, we have very, very early in career staff right the way through to like seasoned veterans, and ideas will come from anywhere, right? And like that is very much the case at Ridgeline Games. If you were to join us, it's a very open working environment. Like we talk a lot, we meet a lot. We have lots of casual hangouts that we do as well as obviously like all of the working meetings that we need to do. And we're really trying to give all of our creatives, and everybody at the studio, like space to be able to do their work and then come together and kind of share ideas.
Hi, nice place you got here.
We have last question from George, and George is asking, what kind of models do you appreciate the most in the portfolio, which I would assume what is the qualities in the modeling portfolio, 3D portfolio that you're mostly looking for when you're reviewing?
When it comes to the models themselves that we see in content portfolios, I'm looking for like really high levels of execution for either sculpts or photogrammetry derived models, preferably cleaned up, preferably, like ready to be baked. I love seeing like the cages and the baking models and even like lod chains and stuff like that. I see a range of models in portfolios where people have just like, these are all like my high end models that I've thrown in Octane or, Cycles or something like that. And they look incredible, but they don't really tell me anything about how you're going to execute when we need to make all of these things work on screen at the same time.
And now the meatiest part of our podcast, which is AI versus humans. In this part, we are trying to trick our beloved art directors and ask them to review portfolios of real humans and the things that you love about those portfolios and the things that could be improved. and spot that one AI made piece. So let's get that going. We have 5 pieces and ready to roll.
Oh, let's get this party started!
The first thing that jumps out to me is the lighting for this piece is kind of throwing me a little bit. It's an unusual type of lighting to put with this type of model, and the thing that seems odd about this model is the detail inside the model feels like it comes from a lower polygon in-game model, but the smoothness of the edges feels like it's a very, very high polygon silhouette. So yeah, so this is an interesting one.
Next.
There's some nice specular responses. There's some interesting material separation on it. They're definitely leaning into things that I like about the model. It feels like it's a sci-fi gun built over, a real world SMG as well. So some of the sci-fi elements don't fit super well for me with the kind of current generation like grips and stuff like that I see on the gun as well. Yeah, this one's interesting. Okay.
Love that. Next.
This is a nice, definitely higher fidelity weapon. I like the terrifying looking bullets for this. Yeah, it's all very imaginative. I think the lighting for this is much better than it was on the 2 previous guns as a presentation render for a portfolio, for sure.
Very nice indeed.
Okay, number 4.
Yeah, so an interesting carbine with a grenade launcher. Good material separation. Again, like picking out some incontinuities with maybe like texel density or maybe approach to doing different parts of the model. One thing that I think jumps out about the wear and tear on this one is like the wear and tear feels kind of generalized, but yeah, looks like a reasonable density model.
Next.
Well, this feels like it's under a studio lighting environment for sure. Maybe lit a little bit harshly for a portfolio piece. It would be nice to have like a little fill light in the back there. And I'm seeing light picking up on some of the edges of the clips, but not underneath the barrel or the receiver of the gun, which is interesting. Again, I don't know if that's a skin or whether that's supposed to be wear and tear on the gun. It feels like an overlaid skin or texture or maybe substance overlay, but doesn't feel like it gives direction to the weapon at all. So yeah, it's a nice piece.
Okay, this is it. It's time to choose your favorite and the most promising portfolio piece and the one that was made by AI.
Time to choose.
I feel like the one that stands out the most is this one. Number 3, was it? It's got a good amount of design as well as some nice finishing on the materials. I really enjoy designs where the artist has maybe thought about how to put this together. I'd be surprised if the thinking in this one was generated by AI.
That's your favorite piece, right?
I think that's my favorite piece.
Well done, boy.
Okay, and which one is AI?
I'm sure literally every person watching this is screaming at the very obvious AI one, but I actually think it might be number 5.
Is that your last answer?
Sure, I'll go with number 5.
Yay!
You're absolutely right, sir!
Oh, I love playing this game, and also makes me very happy that an art director can spot AI at all times. So far, we have it's a second episode, and we have both of them being won by art directors. So 0-2. Chris, thank you so much for joining me today for shooting this episode. I loved it, and I hope it's going to be inspiration for people who are trying to excel their career and also explore joining maybe your project or a similar projects that have the same artistic visuals. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I appreciate that very much.
Thanks so much, Ninel. Thank you.
Wait, please don't go. This is not the end. We unfortunately didn't have time to shoot the portfolio review last time we were doing an episode with Chris, but we know how much you guys appreciate that, and that's one of the key moments to improve everyone's work. So we asked Chris to separately shoot portfolio review of 2 of the amazing artists that were in the AI or human section. These artists are Andrei Lukashevich and Maud Ratchata. Enjoy watching. See you soon in the next episodes, and I hope this portfolio review allows you guys to grow. Bye!
Okay, so we're going to take a look at Andrei Lukashevich's portfolio on ArtStation. It's great when people have a mix of styles and range inside their portfolios, but it's also quite nice to know that when people consider putting together their portfolios, that they think about a theme, a way that they like to do thumbnails, and it just helps the person looking at it kind of understand as they kind of work through the catalogue of art. Okay, so let's take a look at the vintage binoculars first. They kind of jumped out at me. There's a nice leather texture on the case for sure, and on the handles of the binoculars. The first feedback I would give specifically about this is I'm noticing quite a big pixel or texel density difference between the case itself and the binoculars. As I move down a little bit more and kind of focus on the case, I feel like there's potentially an inconsistency with how the polys have been used around the silhouette of the shape. So I'm noticing wavy line here, and then the internal faces here like seem really, really straight. Maybe the first thing I'd ask actually if I was interviewing this person is if I could see the topology of this model. I think they've done a pretty decent job of balancing the topology on this model. Everything that's circular certainly looks smooth, and I'm imagining they've probably optimized on the flatter surfaces. But that's a pretty good piece all round. The next thing I'm going to look at is this little vignette. One thing I really encourage people to do when they're working on their portfolios is to consider the scene that it's going into. And if at all possible, try and show their object actually in situ in a scene. The reason why I picked this one out specifically, I'm looking at the actually really nicely put together, I guess, kind of water jug or liquid jug. I like the chrome values a lot more than I'm seeing on the binoculars that we just took a look at. But it feels like this prop came from a different place as maybe the bowl and the table and maybe some of the other items in the background. So this is great. The artist has shown the object in situ and now they're showing it isolated. This is super helpful when you're kind of going through a portfolio because it just shows, you get the sort of macro and then you start to get the micro of how the artist is thinking about stuff. My sort of main comment here is I feel like the table is just a different level of quality. It feels like probably a procedural pass or a smart material or something like that has been used for a base and then like kind of worked into. And again, I'm picking up on like very heavy kind of maybe contour maps being used here as well to do edge detection that are just really making the table pop out to me. And I'm going to move over to this portfolio piece here in the desert just because it's something really different. I love it when artists have a really strong, clear vision in their portfolio, but also it's great to see artists experimenting with other styles and techniques and range. It just kind of shows kind of a skill set that would be really useful in the studio because we don't always get to do exactly the thing that we like doing. So what makes this scene pop for me is obviously the heavy stylization's been implemented really nicely. The Andre obviously really understands how to lay down paint strokes and hand-painted textures as well as using procedural stuff. The placement and composition of the scene's actually really nice as well. The only thing that I would add to this is maybe one extra image at the bottom that shows a breakdown of the very specific props that the artist is trying to show off. Some of the vegetation pieces in isolation, some of the pots, rocks, etc. And some of the topology to go alongside that as well. Cool. Very talented artist.
Your son has a very great talent.
Right, let's take a look at Mods Racharta's ArtStation portfolio. I'm going to start with this piece down here. I'm a big fan of Metal Slug, and Eri is one of the characters from there. Mods obviously captured reference from the original arcade game and some of the SNK box art. It kind of feels like we're working with not game res models for sure, definitely something a little bit more expensive. The quality of the shaders looks really nice. Most of my feedback here would be around posing. The characters in the game have really super dynamic poses. They're always really hunched over and have got their guns up and forwards. The whole game is very frenetic, and I think I'd love to see this character actually posed up a little bit more like her source material. But I love this, and I do love a good bit of fan art. I'm going to jump to something that is on the higher end of realism here. This is Ophelia from Warhammer, I believe, actually, is jumping out right here. So this is an Unreal interpretation of this character. It's kind of scary and really, really cool. I think the face and the hair looks awesome. I love the detailing, the one eye. I'm sure is in the backstory of that character, so I love that kind of attention to detail with the source material. In terms of materials, I think the skin and hair shaders, and especially around the mouth and teeth, are actually quite successful. I'd maybe encourage the artist just to take another look at some of the metals. It feels like this is being presented in the wet, so I can understand like leaning a little bit more on the shiny side of this. But also it kind of veers over from feeling shiny to almost chromy colors underneath there, which I specifically get from some of these tubes. Maybe paints, kind of getting those into looking at plastics and photometric values from paints there. And then obviously looking at the metal and what they're trying to achieve, you tend to see those high points on metal where there's been impacts or scrapes, and then you see oxidization and other effects on the metal as well. Just noticed at the bottom of this section, the artist has actually included kind of a breakdown of the model. So we have albedo, we have some detail stuff, some really good details around the cataract there and how they've implemented that, which is really cool. When I actually look at this page, I know there are some repeats in this portfolio here, but I see a lot of the same eyes, a lot of the same techniques maybe used for lips and face structure. And it'd be really interesting to see this artist like push out into maybe some different styles, or maybe look at a really old human or a really young human as well, if they're into that. The last thing I'm probably going to take a look at in here is this hand painting. So it's really nice to see 3D artists, especially doing hand painting and hand drawing. It really helps the artist kind of understand form and lighting and color theory and how light works with skin. And these are like super important, because once you understand that, later on when you're dealing with shaders or renderers, you kind of know where to go fix the problem. This artist seems to definitely be working on their paint strokes. It's really nice to see lots of very clean brush strokes and not a lot of blurring and shadery type work in there as well. Definitely some nice values around the eyes and the lips and the nose, which is great. The only thing that I would maybe feedback around this, it being maybe more of a kind of subjective feedback, I'd love to have seen the artist really kind of focus on the face window itself, and then add all of that extra detail. So maybe some blurred details in the background, maybe some more detailing in the hair and the earrings as well. It's quite jarring going between the eyes and the earrings. So yeah, another really interesting, great portfolio here as well.